All right, well, good day, everyone. How are you doing today? It's the Christmas Eve 2016 here. So I should start out by saying happy holidays, everybody. Whatever you might celebrate or not, happy holidays. It's ultimately what you make it. And while a lot of us are cozy in our homes, we still realize that a lot of us are homeless. And a lot of us, while we have a loving family and people who care about us, a lot of us have no family and no friends. And we need to realize that, and I think we do. And just because others are suffering doesn't mean that we can't enjoy ourselves. And just because there's negativity and cruel nature in the world, that doesn't mean that we have to partake in it. However, there are times when we have to step up and say enough is enough. And bullshit is bullshit. And we call it where we see it, and we do what we can. I guess the point of this video is to urge all of you, every one of you out there, anybody who happens to be listening to this, to speak your mind and to defend freedom of speech, defend freedom of democracy, regardless of what you think this country has become or what your country has become, regardless of your viewpoints on religion, on police, on, corruption, on business, on capitalism or socialism. Regardless of all of that, just remember that it's up to us as individuals to speak our minds. We are the media now. And this has happened quickly. This has happened faster than many things in history we could have imagined. I mean, the computer age has brought forth so many just oh shit moments. Like, wow, what did we really get ourselves into? The idea of the internet was freedom. Freedom to explore, to learn, to educate, to discuss. And there are people who want to control that. So there are folks in there who are doing everything in their power to edit the things that I say, that you say, that all of us say. And not as individuals. But if an individual is threatening enough to the system as a whole, they will be considered a domestic terrorist. The word terrorism is thrown around today towards anybody who dares speak up against the system that they're a part of, regardless of how they truly feel. Or, for example, filming police officers. The people who have been, 10 years ago who were filming cops, their cameras were being taken, they were being harassed and threatened. And many of these people are the same ones that form groups like Cop Watch and Cop Block. And now there are cameras and websites that are designed to send your information that you're filming directly to the website out of fear of having your camera confiscated and destroyed. This happens all the time. And it scares the people in power that we have as much access and as many resources as we do to discuss these things. It scares the hell out of them. Just the simple act of piracy. They're not sure what to do. Companies are losing millions of dollars, billions of dollars in profits because people are uploading free music, free movies, and then it gets into this territorial issue of, well, aren't they content creators as well? For example, me with my YouTube channel. If I were to make a video, and then someone were to steal that video and use it as their own documentary, I would be bothered by it because I spent all that time and resource into building it or creating the movie. Let's say I made a documentary of my own. If this happens to a larger company, a lot of people say, well, they're already millionaires, they're already billionaires, it doesn't matter, this should be free access. There's a line drawn where something is actually owned or possessed or should be controlled. Now when we get into media and sharing files, what I'm trying to get at here is that I don't take sides on the issue of downloading illegally. I take issues on the idea of people sharing information from our government, the U.S. government, that is being shared by people like Edward Snowden. Now, when the Snowden issue happened, it's like I've heard people say, he's not a hero. He's just doing what anybody should do in his position. However, a lot of people call him a traitor. And I've spoken with a lot of people who say, nobody should be able to share information about our government, that this is important to protecting us. And 50 years ago, or during the Cold War, sure, they could pull that off. They could convince us that The Ruskies wanted to get our information, and in many instances they did. There were spies everywhere. Today, times have changed. The world is different. It's not the same world that our parents grew up in. Information is freely exchanged everywhere, and there's very little that you can hide anymore. People like Edward Snowden brought to light that our own government was spying on us. And several other cases that you may have never heard of people who were arrested for a particular case. One guy who exposed the Stingray device, which picks up all cell phones within a certain, area, and it's very invasive. And nobody would have known about it if he hadn't become his own, he hadn't been his own lawyer for his case and went through all the paperwork to find out exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, all these people who are trying to expose corruption, they're threatened. They're threatened with prison. They're threatened, their families are arrested. With the cop issue, people who have filmed police shootings, unjustified police shootings, and which there are plenty of them, there will always be the other side to say, well, the police are just scared. I think you should be scared if you're going to take that job, but it doesn't mean that police should be brutalized or harassed merely for being police. But what this has done is opened up a whole new can of worms. Not only do the people have their cameras now, but now the police are forced to wear, some of them. They approved a $75 million plan to put body cameras on the officers. But the big question going around is, who analyzes the footage and where does it go? Well, what I would like to say is that there should be a publicly accessible website where all police are monitored and all of their actions are uploaded instantly to the net. People should be aware of what the police are doing. But merely even speaking out against them or filming them, they're willing to put your rights on hold in order to protect themselves. And I understand the other side of the debate. I've heard people say, well, if you don't put your hands up, you're going to get shot. Or, well, you shouldn't have been stealing. Or, black people commit more crimes. None of this means a goddamn thing in the big picture. People who are shallow enough to think that that everyone who gets shot deserves to get shot, it's ludicrous. There are plenty of countries who can deal with violent criminals without killing them. And more to the point, there are plenty of places where people who are running away from police aren't shot in the back a dozen times or more. It's not just police, obviously. This issue goes so deep. This goes into the very corruption of every part of our society. The prison industrial complex has become a complete pile of shit, as if it wasn't already. Anybody who's never been to jail doesn't know how disgusting it really is. And a lot of folks, it's a sensitive discussion. I had a friend of mine posted on something on Facebook the other day about for-profit prisons, which is something that I'm very against, and so I was posting a comment on there, and I read one from somebody else, one of his friends, who said, well, I'm all for prison labor. He said, they did the crime, and they should be forced to pay back to society. And I said, you know what? You're not understanding the point here. These people aren't just doing community service or working for their communities. They have Verizon call centers in prisons. They're making all kinds of different products for companies, corporations. And a person may say, well, how can that happen? If it's a state-run or a federally run prison, how can they be catering to corporations? Well, maybe you don't realize that most of our prisons these days, they're not state-run anymore. They're not federally run. They're federally funded, and they're privately run. And the private prison industrial complex is horrible. They have more protests, more riots, more problems than any of the previous systems that we had in place. And they claim that it's a better way to go. Everything is being turned over to the private sector. We've outsourced our military. We've outsourced our police forces. We've outsourced our prison industrial complex. We're outsourcing our politics. Everything. It's just become a joke. And so, I could go on and on about this and think of a million other problems in the world, but I don't want to. I want to enjoy my holiday without worrying about the negative side of things. But at the same time, I'm very well aware that there's a lot of shit going on out there that we need to deal with. And I'm just urging all of you as individuals to document, take note of anything that you see that's wrong or corrupt, to film police in every interaction, but film each other as well. Hold each other accountable, because ultimately people aren't upset about being filmed or portrayed in a bad light. They're upset about being called out on the things they do. And there are a lot of fucked up people out there. There are a lot of fucked up people indeed. And I'm just grateful that I'm not one of them. That I understand what it means to accept people for who they are, regardless of color, religion, political view, that we're all just people here. And some of us really are dirtbags, and I understand that the police have to be hardcore with people who are brutal and violent. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the non-violent people who are being shot and killed. And it's my opinion that a person without any type of weapon should never, ever be shot and killed. Especially with the cops don't understand whether they have a mental defect or an issue or a disease. Humans are just humans, you know. We make mistakes. But there's never a reason that a person should be shot, you know, and especially a youngster that doesn't know any better. And these aren't new things. These are just things that are now being pointed out and filmed. So it's not as if the police have become worse. It's just that we're starting to hold people accountable for things, you know. I mean, the civil rights movement, there were some horrific attacks that went on by police back then. But nobody was filming it. Nobody had cell phones and cameras yet. And so it really is important that we're tied into this technological era and that we're embracing the types of resources that we have. Because we do have the power. We do have the power to make a difference. And a lot of people are afraid to speak out for being labeled as a domestic terrorist. You know, if merely being an activist means being a terrorist, then there's a hell of a lot of them out there. So, not sure what else to say on this subject. It's just something I wanted to mention. It's just unacceptable what's going on, but it's also part of life. And so, to leave on a positive note, I would like to say that if you go in and you watch a documentary about everything that's wrong with the world, you're going to walk away from it seeing the world's a bad place. But if you turn around and watch a positive documentary, an uplifting one about the future, how great, you can walk away from that thinking the world is a good place. So I would just like to see people not get stuck in either paradigm. To not sit here and pretend like everything's just fine and all we have to do is live our own lives in our narrow tunnel vision. But at the same time, not think that everybody is out to get us. And that's a very difficult line to walk. So I hope you all have a great holiday, and I'll talk to you soon. Soon. Or later. We'll see.